Welcome back to another episode of Hawk Off the Press. My name is Madison Hricik. I'm the Iowa football beat reporter, and we are talking football all the time, once again, because it is August. So to join with me this week, I have once again brought back David Eickholt from Hawkeye Insider. David, welcome back.
It's been a busy few weeks, but I'm actually excited that we have some sort of substance to talk about because, I mean, obviously we're still projecting a little bit, but it's nice that, we actually get to talk to some players and Kirk firsthand. So, at least there's some more credibility attached to what we're saying, which is always great.
Well, not only that, you and I had purposely delayed starting recording this because of the coaches poll, first one of the season coming out. We wanted to make sure that we saw the poll before we decided to talk about it. And we'll break that down as well because the FWAA announced a few preseason watch lists as well, with a couple Hawkeyes mentioned in those. So, it's August. Football season's here. Can you believe it?
I'm ready. It's been a long summer, and I'm starting to finally get that itch. It usually hits me just before media day, and then after we get out of media day, it's like, okay, we're close. We're close. And then once we get to actually see the kids practice and talk with it during Iowa media day, it's like, okay, now we just need to see the game played. Let's go. But unfortunately, and I'm sure we'll get into it, we're not any closer to knowing who's going to start at quarterback. So, I mean, we're going to be projecting about this for the next 32 days, 31 days until kickoff, and maybe even past that based on what KF's kind of been telling us.
Yeah, well, we'll start with Big Ten Media Days. Both of us were in Chicago last week. It was Tuesday when Iowa went was an extremely busy day for a multitude of reasons. One of them being Commissioner Tony Petitti had an opportunity to kind of address the state of the conference, the state of college athletics, and it was right when the Protect College Sports Act was getting modified, and so there was a lot of chaos surrounding the greater picture of college athletics, and we can talk about that in a second. But let's talk specifically about Iowa here, as you mentioned and as you teased. Kirk Ferentz, in his opening statement, made it clear they don't know who a quarterback is. They don't know when they'll find that out. He's hoping it'll be sometime this month. I mean, at this point, there's only so much we can say about this quarterback battle because you and I are not watching practices every day. But what we can say at this point is that this isn't coach speak. This is genuinely what's going on. They might have an idea of what they're looking for that they haven't said to us point blank, but at this point, it's anybody's guess if it's going to be Jeremy Hecklinski or Hank Brown.
I felt probably about 65-35. It was going to be Hecklinski going into spring. Now I actually think it's about 51-49 or 50-50. Like, this is going to be a true battle that comes down the stretch because I think Hecklinski earned a lot of credibility. I mean, that's why we saw him in the depth chart, the back half of the season. And with his mobility aspect, it probably fit what Iowa was running more so when they had Mark Gronowski than Hank Brown. Because even if Hank Brown does end up starting, they're going to adjust the playbook from what it was last year, right? So I think that's an important caveat to the conversation. But, right now, I still barely lean Hecklinski just because I just think the short area quickness, the mobility, that's a game breaker. But I will give Hank Brown a lot of credit because he did look better than I thought he was going to look when we've gotten the chance to watch him. When we got the chance to speak to him, he strikes me as a guy that actually seems confident in his game because, look, he had an impossible situation last year, right? Coming in to the Indiana game. And I give him credit for talking with the media after. Look, he said a lot of nothing, quite frankly, but that's a hard spot for a guy who is not starting to be in and to have to face the media. So that's not a criticism, but I'm just putting it in a greater context. Now you get him in the spring and in the summer, and he acts like a starting quarterback. And that's exactly what you want to see. And the thing that I loved seeing was he looked to push the ball vertically in the spring practice. And that's something Tim Lester has wanted to see. At the same time, we wanted to see Jeremy Hecklinski cut down maybe the riskier throws. And he's done that. So from all accounts, this is a 50-50 battle. I still lean Hecklinski, Maddie, but I'm not going to be mad at anybody either way. It's just too close to call.
When spring started, I would have agreed with you that I was leaning Hecklinski just because I felt like just watching how Iowa had adapted with Gronowski at quarterback and seeing what a dual threat quarterback could really do for an offense was very eye-opening. But I also do kind of look at the fact that, how much has Hecklinski continued to work on limiting those riskier plays, those deep shots. Because as you and I were talking about before we started recording this, Iowa's first 3 weeks of the Big Ten schedule are going to be insane, extremely difficult, and it's truly going to. I truly think it will be a defining point of this season. I really do think those 3 weeks are going to take a lot of the grand out. I should say the outside looking in will hone in on those 3 weeks quite a bit. Whether we as local media covering this team end up agreeing with that greater soundscape or not. But I think where I almost wonder if Hank Brown has the edge is because of the fact that he has gone in and has admitted he's learned from the Indiana game. I agree with you. That was an extremely difficult position to be put in, and that was a tough decision to have to try and make it. I still agree with you when you said it in the press box against Indiana. If he made that screen pass, I think Iowa beats Indiana that game. But you could tell he's learned from that. You could tell he's been reflective on it. And I like the strides that Brown was making. I still am thinking that you could flip a coin to see who the quarterback is, though. I don't feel like I lean one way or the other because of the fact that our sample size is still so small, and it'll be a little bit bigger with Kids Day, but that's all we're getting. At least that we're under the impression of at this point, that us as media will be seeing Kids Day, and then that'll be it until September 5th, most likely.
Here's the other thing to think about too, just from a fan perspective. And again, Kirk, Tim Lester, and all of them, they're not taking this into an account, but we still need to bring it up. If you're an Iowa fan and Hank Brown trots out there after what he did against Indiana, I just think it's going to be a little bit deflating amongst the fans, fairly or unfairly for Hank Brown and the Iowa staff. Because again, things change. Like, again, he went in there the fourth quarter. The circumstances were awful, quite frankly, by the way, against the undefeated eventual national champions, right? But that screen pass seems so simple. It was so open. I think that's what's going to be kind of burned into people's skulls. But at the same time, if Hank Brown goes out there and he starts against Iowa State and throws 3 touchdowns and Iowa beats Iowa State by 14, nobody's thinking about Indiana anymore. So again, it does go both ways. It goes both ways, but it's still important to kind of bring that up. The other thing I'm very curious about that surprised me a little bit, Kirk said that the competition could go into the season.
Yes.
You have to have it done by Iowa State. You just do, because you need to have your starting quarterback get as many reps as possible. And not that you want to look that far ahead, but like, do you want your first or second game as a full-time starter to be going at the Big House in a game that could not make or break the season? But like, if Iowa goes 0-3 in that stretch, Maddie, like, what's everybody saying? Can't wait for basketball season.
Yeah.
Like they're checking out, right? So there's a lot of factors here. Like, Iowa usually peaks in November. They got to peak by Ohio State. They got to be approaching that peak at Michigan, and then they need to play well against Washington. Like, this is a very unconventional year, and there's a lot of pressure, obviously, on the quarterback, and I just think that they need to find a way to build up who's ever confidence of the guy that's going to end up starting for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you need to make a surefire decision. To me, the season opener against NIU, if you play both quarterbacks to see who shines bright under those lights, yes, NIU has a recent reputation of upsetting Power 4 teams, but I don't necessarily see like that game. To me, everybody's going to be evaluating who the quarterbacks are. It wouldn't surprise me if I've joked about this, but I'll say it again. Like, it wouldn't surprise me when they announce the starters in Kinnick Stadium if they show both Hank and Jeremy, or they just skip over the quarterback position. Like, it truly wouldn't surprise me at this point. However, I'm still of the belief that, you could play both quarterbacks against NIU. I think you could play both quarterbacks against Iowa State. I don't think that's what they want to do, but they could if they feel they need to. And I think you could against UNI. But I will agree to you to a point that you don't want a full-time starter's first real game to be at Michigan, especially to start that 3-week stretch. But if the two of them continue to be neck and neck, it might come to a point of, do they have a choice? Like, do they need to keep seeing them perform? I honestly really don't think it'll come to that point. But with how much we know and don't know, I feel like there's almost a sense of any possibility is open and on the table right now. And so I feel like there's almost a concept of like, we should throw it out there, even if nothing sticks to the wall.
It's interesting to me because, again, if Iowa State was the third week game, I would understand. Because, like, again, you have a weird situation, right? Like, Iowa's a 30-point favor against Northern Illinois. I mean, Iowa's going to win that football game, respectfully. They're going to beat UNI. Iowa's a double-digit favor against Iowa State, and I'll be honest with you, we talked to Big Ten Media Days. I don't think Iowa State's going to be very good at all this season. In fact, I would say they'll probably go 3-9. But I don't think anybody knows anything about Iowa State. I don't think Jimmy Rogers knows anything at this point, right? So, like, we don't have a real grasp. But where I'm going with that is this. I don't think you can toy around with Iowa State from the sole fact that it's a big rivalry. Okay, it's a big rivalry. We know the weirdest things happen. We've seen some really crappy Iowa State teams compete and beat good Iowa teams. I mean, obviously the 2002 sticks out. Not that was a bad Iowa State team, but that was a great Iowa team, arguably the greatest under Kirk Ferentz. So when you have all those things into account, on top of the fact, you know how bad Iowa fans in Iowa want to beat Iowa State after what's happened the last couple of years, after the 2 field goals. This is out of Kirk Ferentz's nature, but it will not surprise me, Maddie, if Iowa tries to run up the score against Iowa State. I really think they want to prove a point. And how do you do that? You play one quarterback till you're up 35. I just with all of Kirk Ferentz's talk about consistency, letting your quarterback get into a rhythm, with all of the past stubbornness from Kirk Ferentz to not put in backup quarterbacks, right? It's so hard and that's why it's so weird for me to like hear him talk about, hey, this could go 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to put that on the table. I don't think that that's going to happen. I do think they each get a half in that Northern Illinois game. And then I think they got to make a decision because, again, I think Iowa's really going to make it a point of emphasis this year to, like, prove to Iowa State, especially with Matt Campbell gone, they're like, yeah, like, we're still the top dog in the state. Back to reality type mentality. It'll be really interesting, I think, though.
Well, and I think the circumstances of it being a night game and all of that kind of stuff certainly play to it. And with how much turnover Iowa State has had this past season, there are so many question marks. So, I mean, I do agree in a sense of I think there's going to be a severe chip on Iowa's shoulder for that game of reestablishing the leader side of that rivalry and everything. I mean, we could go on and on about this quarterback battle for this entire podcast if we really wanted to. But there are other positions we need to talk about, specifically the defensive line, which is another position group that Ferentz said Iowa doesn't know a ton about. And it's been a topic of conversation since the spring, just like the quarterbacks, where, I mean, this is going to be an entirely new defensive line. They're going to have a pretty decent secondary and a pretty young but talented linebacker room. But that defensive line is going to look completely different. I know we talked to the same 3 players in Chicago, David, but I'm curious what your takeaways were from just hearing what Lutmer and Montgomery and even Addison and Stringa had to say about the defensive line.
Look, they're always going to back their boys, right? Like Zach Lutmer and Jay Montgomery talked about how much everybody's progressed and, everybody's doing the right things. And I have no reason to doubt that. I think they have a few very high potential guys. Obviously, Jose Epinesa, he's a freak athlete. Obviously comes from an NFL bloodline. I think there's a lot of tools there. Kenny Merriweather just seemed like he's poised to break out. I think he's got size to really do some damage. I think Bryce Hawthorne has a real chance to be a real player too. I think last year was an adjustment just from obviously going from FCS to Big Ten, but now he understands it. We've heard so much about his quick twitch, his violent hands. He's up to about 300 pounds now too. So he's rocking about 6'3", 300 pounds. Like that is a massive defensive tackle.
Yes.
I am worried about the defensive line. With all that being said, like that to me is going to be the make or break for the defense. Obviously, I think Zach Lutmer is going to be best at cash, but I think Anthony Hawkins is going to be very curious to see if he can progress enough for him to hold down the safety spot next to Tyler Brown. But I think Iowa's edge rushers, I think, have a little bit of a higher floor. Just that other defensive tackle spot, like I need to see something. Will Hubert, Luke Gaffney kind of leading it. Bryce Stevenson, I don't think has caught on quite quickly, as quick as I think Iowa was hoping. And again, you lose 7 of your top 8 guys from last season. Like you're overhauling an entire unit. Essentially, what special teams is doing right now, aside from obviously the new coaching staff. The thing that kind of, I don't want to say scares me because I think that's a little bit dramatic, but Kirk's comments at the podium when he talked about, yeah, there's nobody that's going to play 500 snaps for us.
Yeah.
I had a couple alarm bells go off in my head. Like, oh, does that mean you have a hodgepodge of guys that have different skills, but maybe are at the same overall baseline? I think you would like to see one or two guys really establish themselves as kind of that leader. And I'll tell you what, I think Kirk Ferentz and them were really upset that the 5 for 5 came out, because you know what they would do to have Aaron Graves come back for another year in a Hawkeye uniform? Obviously, I think he'd play really well for this team, but I think aside from special teams, defensive tackle and the defensive line is my number one concern on this football team right now, May.
I think honestly, that's where I have a hard time placing Iowa in the grand scheme of college football. Like I'm getting ready to vote in the AP preseason poll here in the next day or so. And I'll be very honest. I think because of the fact that Iowa doesn't have a surefire quarterback, the special teams is brand new. And there's some questions around this defensive line. I'm not sure where to put them. I think that they should be inside the top 25, personally. Yeah. I think they have the talent to do that. Clearly, the coaches that have took part in the coaches poll agree with that. Iowa was at number 22 today. I don't know where I would put them right now. And I think that's just my opinion. That's also due to the fact that I also know that I want to do some more research on some other teams to see where other teams also stack up, because Iowa's not the only team in the college football landscape, or frankly, even the Big Ten, that's got some position groups that teams are a little concerned about right now. Even I would argue, Ohio State's offensive line right now is a point of concern for the Buckeyes heading into this season. So, I mean, that's just my thing. Is it's just like it makes it a little bit harder. One thing I will say about the defensive line, and to your point with Ferentz saying like he doesn't see anybody having 500 snaps, I don't see it either. I don't see somebody that you can point to in this position group right now and say this person's going to play almost every single snap. But I do think there are some players that might be rotational at the beginning of the year just because they want to set up a consistent rotation that end up taking the majority of the snaps later on in the year. I do think that's something that we could likely see from Ebenesa this year. I do think that's something we could see potentially from Gaffney, depending on how he performs. I've heard a lot of really good things about how he's progressed, his leadership, his mentorship as well. Kamari Brown, the Elon transfer, has some potential that we haven't really seen just yet. I don't know if he'll end up being somebody that gets a significant number of the snaps later in the season. He might be somebody that's a bit like a Stevenson, where he kind of has a little bit more of a rotational role this season and potentially could take a big step this year. But I mean, I agree. I think the defensive line is going to be a huge part. I'm hoping we see some progress from the spring game when we had Kids Day here on the 15th. So I didn't think the defensive line was bad, but I don't think we saw the full picture. And granted, we won't see a full picture either. But I would like to see some. I still want to see some forward progress in that group.
I want to reiterate this too. Like, they have guys that can make a difference. Like, I'm not like in full panic that they're not talented. It's nothing to do with talent. You have a lot of young guys now that have to step up in these roles. And my big question is, especially with a lot of important games early in the season, I think it's one of those things where, like, if you had the same group come back next year, Maddie, I would argue it'd probably be one of the strengths of the team. Like, I just think they're a year behind of where they, where Iowa will need them to be at. On top of the fact that you play Michigan, physical Big Ten team, especially in the trenches, right? Ohio State. I don't need to expand on Ohio State, right? You think about those two schools in particular. The Iowa defensive line, like, they just have to progress so much quicker in a shorter amount of time. And I think you'd even feel better if Iowa played them in November and you gave the defensive line a chance to kind of establish itself, to get some of those young players in a rhythm. So again, I don't necessarily think it's a talent issue. It's about, can you have them unlock their potential quicker than you probably would have liked. I would have liked to see Iowa go in the portal a little bit more, just for some FBS guys at the defensive line. But I mean, you and I've told you about Kamari Brown basically since Iowa got him. Like, if Iowa just lets him pin his ears back and say, go get the quarterback, I think he has a chance to be like a pass rush specialist. I don't know how well he'll be able to contain the edge. But again, that's one of the things where I'm like, if I'm watching this team, the top three things, like, it's going to be probably quarterback, defensive line, And then I'll be honest, I'd probably throw in Iowa's wide receivers before special
I was
teams.
going to say the same things.
But
Yeah.
special teams is probably right up there because the only thing I think we know about special teams, well, I think I know a little bit more than I should in terms of this. I think Eli Ozix could be the kicker. I don't think
I think
you
so
bring
as
him
well.
in. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. I think that Tanner Philpott's going to be the punter. And they brought in 2 transfers. I think Boston Everett needs another year or so. And then Zach Lutmer is going to be the punt returner. The kick returner. So we need to see the Iowa's wide receivers take a step forward. But in terms of like where Iowa's question marks are, that defensive line is really, really intriguing to me. And they have the names, but do they have that sort of star production attached with the names and the fans being able to name recognition, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up an excellent point here. We talk a lot about these individual players, particularly on the defensive line. And you can make this case truly with any position on the team, but specifically here, we've talked a lot about these individual players and the potential they have. I think the bigger thing that you just mentioned is, can they gel together and work as a unit to be able to accomplish the goal of getting to the quarterback, of stopping the run quickly and effectively. And that's the thing that was so appealing about like the mature defensive lines that we've seen from Iowa in the past, particularly last year. But with so many new faces and so many faces that Iowa has basically, taken from the portal and trained up in the last, what's it been now, 8 months or so, give or take. It just leaves a lot of uncertainty to this role. So I agree with you. I think that it's the gelling part of it that I think is where the biggest concern is, not the individual talent. We'll touch on special teams here because you brought it up. I mean, the big thing for me that Ferentz said that I thought was the big takeaway is that they're young. Training camp might look rough. It's happened before. I did enjoy a little bit when Ferentz had made the joke that, Drew Stevens' freshman year, he was pretty sure there were times that he thought Stevens was intentionally missing kicks in practice. And it all ended up working out. I think special teams is going to be a little bit more surefire than a lot of these other positions, kind of like you said. The thing that stands out to me was, particularly with the punt return, Ferentz had made it clear, like, whoever that role is going to be, whether it's Lutmer, KJ Parker, whoever it may end up being, like, they're not going to be Caden Weegan. And so he basically was like, don't put Caden Weegan level expectations on somebody who's going to be doing a punt return job their first year this year. And I thought that was a very important and valid thing to bring up, because the reality is Iowa's had really good returners and Weegan was phenomenal. And it's hard to put that expectation on somebody who's going to be taking that role for the first time.
That's why Weegan was 4th round pick. I mean, respectfully,
absolutely.
It wasn't due to the wide receiver production, right? It was what he can do in the open field and what he can do returning and having kind of a knack and having speed, quite frankly, to be able to do that. I'm not as concerned about special teams as I probably should be. And I want to make it clear, like, LeVar Woods is excellent. LeVar Woods deserved every promotion that he'll ever get. He deserved to go to Michigan State to be an assistant head coach. But what Ferentz has done to emphasize special teams throughout his career should give Iowa fans more confidence that they're going to be able to replace it. I think Chris Polizzi put together, quite frankly, an A+ introductory press conference. I thought he was absolutely spectacular. And I think that should alleviate some concerns. Like, there's obviously a huge desire for him to succeed. And I don't think he was using a lot of buzzwords. There was a lot of genuineness in the way he navigated himself, and he made it clear. I think Iowa, having countless examples of impact players on offense and defense get their start on special teams, like, it's just so ingrained in the culture of Iowa football that it essentially, and it sounds really stupid, but hopefully you hear me out on this, it really is a third phase of football at Iowa. Like, it's not offense, defense, special teams. It's offense, defense, special teams. They're all on the same level of importance, right? So I think what Kirk said, I asked him a little bit about it, and he joked, like, you want the bad news or good news? I said, well, let's end on good news, so give me bad news. And then I made it, he forgot to give me the good news. But
that was the most entertaining part of that.
he talked about how he feels good about the core guys. And I think that really showed me a lot. He felt like they have really good gunners. I think that he wants to see more consistency out of his kicking game, obviously, in the punt game. I do think there will be ups and downs, but I also believe in Iowa's scheme and the importance of it. And this is something that they work on all year round. This is not something they just install in fall camp. We saw them spend time on it in the spring practice, right? Like, it's not a normal. They emphasize it more than the average program, is what I'm saying. And Kirk will not let that slide. Now, it might not be a LeVar Woods elite unit. It might not be a top 5 unit. It might not be a top 10. But I'm pretty comfortable, Maddie, to believe like it's going to be a top 25, top 20 special teams unit in year one under Chris Polizzi, especially when you combine the Kirk Ferentz factor into it. Like, anything below that, it's going to surprise me a little bit.
Well, and not only is it the Kirk Ferentz factor, it's the fact that Chris Polizzi has done a really good job implementing a lot of what LeVar Woods has done previously, while making it known, like, he is a little bit of a different coach. One person I will say Ferentz did give flowers to, that I think we should also give flowers, is Brock Sherman. He was a huge part of the recruiting for like Eli Ozick, helping bring in some of the specialists before Polizzi was hired. He's been a huge part of this special teams unit as well. He's been a very active voice. We've seen him in the spring practices that we saw him, that we were able to see a little bit of. You could tell he was an active voice in there too. Yeah. I think his mind is also very sharp and very aware of what Iowa needs to do on the special teams unit. It's not a name that is maybe thrown around nearly as much, but it is somebody that you see very actively taking part of making sure the special teams unit is still running the way that they want it to. And so I think that's a big point to include in that as well. I will say the special teams unit overall, I was a lot more concerned about it maybe at the beginning of the summer. I think as the summer's gone on, I've looked more into it. I've talked to people. I had a conversation with Polizzi on the podcast. I felt there's more certainty over how that's going to develop. They're not going to make any formal announcements on decisions, obviously, at this point, but we can say that there's healthy competition at kicker, at punt return, at punter, and they feel confident in just about anybody they could go with that.
If you get the Kirk Ferentz stamp of approval in special teams, like, you're fine. Like, that literally is where my mind goes. I'm happy you brought Brock Sherman, because that was the guy when LeVar ended up taking the job at Michigan State. Like, I thought Brock Sherman was going to be a real candidate to be the next coordinator. I understand it's such a big jump, but look, you're right. He was LeVar Woods' right-hand man for basically the entire time he was special teams coordinator. He's a very integral part of Iowa football. So I'm kind of with you. I was more nervous months ago. I still am very curious from this aspect, and I don't want it. I'm not trying to fear monger or anything like that, but Iowa has won so many games with special teams throughout the last several years. Like, quite frankly, the offense is so bad. Like, Iowa should not have had a chance to win games. But again, good teams find a way to win. We know what Phil Parker's defense had done. The offense could be opportunistic at times, but what Cooper DeJean, with Caden Weegan, with all these Torrey Taylor, what all these guys have done special teams, it was incredible. But I'm always a believer of progressing and regressing to the mean. Iowa's probably due a loss due to special teams. I'm sorry, like, knock on wood. I'll bring this perfect example for the NFL. You know how many games the Bears just shot themselves in the foot throughout the last decade of the NFL? They should not have won half the games that they won last season entering the fourth quarter, but they won every single one. So again, they had bad luck for so long. Everything always came back around. So again, I think when you get in the nitty gritty of like a Michigan, at a Washington, I'll even go down the list. What about at Illinois? Because that's going to be a game where a lot of people are really very curious. Will Iowa have that stability there? Do they have kind of that ice water in their veins type of special teams to make one or two plays? So again, I hate that I have to like think like that, but I really hope you get my point of like Iowa special teams have had the it factor. We need to see if the special teams can have the consistency and the it factor, because Iowa, I don't want to use the term bailed out. They found ways to win games where every other FBS team and special teams would not be able to win it, but Iowa found a way.
All right, let's take a step back away from positions at Iowa football and look at college football. It is August 4th, which means the preseason coaches poll came out right before we recorded this. As we alluded to earlier, I'm just going to rattle off just some of the highlights from the poll. Ohio State was ranked number one in the poll. Oregon number two, then Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame. That's your top five. Indiana was six. That surprised me. I even said that to you before we started recording. Michigan is 16, Washington is 19, Iowa is 22. So, as I've alluded to earlier, Iowa at the moment, as it stands on August 4th, with the first official poll of the college football season, Iowa's first three Big Ten games are all top 25 games. Is it a surprise? Not really. No. But at the same time, does it reemphasize the point that we've all been saying since whenever the schedule came out, March, that, you know, it's time to see what this schedule is going to look what this team is going to do, because they're going to have to have some answers to start a very, very difficult Big Ten schedule.
You know what's really funny, Maddie, is I was just looking at the list. You know, Indiana's ranked 6th, but the surprising part about it, they have the second most first place votes next to Ohio State. So that means there were several
That's even crazier.
There were several coaches that put Indiana probably a lot farther down than they should have been. So, I mean, not much respect for the Fang national champions. I think Michigan's overrated, quite frankly. I mean, I think they checked in at number 16. Yes. I like Kyle Whittingham. I think he's an excellent coach. I think he's a perfect guy to repair the reputation that Michigan athletics has gone through over the past, 3 or 4 years. I don't see it in year one. I haven't seen Bryce Underwood enough to really feel like, can he be the guy? I know how highly touted he was out of high school, but he's had problems throwing the ball. His mobility is second to none. He's a guy who can make things happen. But I'm curious if they're going to put it together early enough in year one. Washington is kind of my big question mark team. I mean, Devin Williams is unbelievable, but I got to tell you, if I was his teammate, I don't know how exactly you welcome him back, considering the fact that he left the team and then decided to go back and that whole big public spectacle. But this isn't a surprise. And I think if there's one thing that Iowa has a real chance to do is to kind of shut people up, because how many times have we heard about the ranked team losing streak? They beat Vanderbilt, but people are like, well, that's a bowl game. They opted, their star tight end opted out. They played the backup, the runner-up for the Heisman. Iowa played really, really well that game. That was a great football game, mind you.
Yeah,
and it was. For making some crazy plays. I'm not a big Diego Pavia guy. You and I were sitting by each other. We were on the field, and you and I both looked at each other and said, "This is one of the toughest dudes I've ever seen."
Oh my gosh, yeah.
For all the antics off the field, he's tough as nails, right?
Absolutely.
So my point is, if you want to continue to kind of break that national narrative of Iowa can't beat ranked teams, well, you got 3 straight opportunities to do so, because all of them are probably going to be ranked by the time Iowa plays them.
I will be shocked if any of the 3 of them drop out of either the coaches poll or when the AP Top 25 comes out. I will be shocked if any of them end up dropping out by the time Iowa plays. All 3 of them at any point.
CBS Sports did last month. They wrote about the toughest 3-game stretches in power football or in college football. I think Northwestern had the number 1, but you could have probably switched it with Iowa's first 3 games. But Iowa checked in at number 2. So CBS Sports, that 3-game stretch is the second toughest in college football. I'm sure you're going to talk about it as weeks go on. Iowa at worst has to go 1-2 in that stretch. I don't know who they beat. I have an idea in mind. If they go 2-1, then you're talking about Iowa making a playoff, because I guarantee you, if they go 2-1 in that stretch and they finish non-conference play undefeated, they will be a top 8 to 10 team in college football. And I might not be crazy by saying they might be higher because of how difficult that 3-week stretch is.
There's certainly an argument to make if they go 2-1 in that 3-week stretch of what their strength of schedule looks like at that point, especially knowing they'll go through basically the Big Ten West to close out the back half of the season. It's so I just pulled up the story that you were looking at, and there's the first line is pretty straightforward. They get straight to the point. There's almost no stylistic relief from week to week for Iowa's defense. Just 3 straight heavyweight fights against national brands. Yeah, I mean, That's that's perfectly put. I mean, this is a huge test. I mean, especially for the defense. We could highlight the defense having a huge test, but I mean, all three phases of the ball. I mean, this is where, as you and I've said, like Iowa has historically peaked in November. They got to figure out a way to start showing out in October. Because I do think there's a scenario where they could go 1-2. I think there's a scenario they could go 2-1. I think there's a scenario they could go 0-3. I think all of those options. I do think there could be a realm of opportunity that they could go 3-0. I think it would be a very tall ask. Just with the caliber of it, the short day turnaround, a West Coast trip on a short week.
First year starting quarterback.
Seemed right. Like there's a lot of factors that it feels like it would be a little bit more out of reach to go 3-0, but all four of those possibilities to me exist.
I think if I had to rank them in order, I think the most likely scenario is Iowa goes 1-2. I think the next one would be 0-3, then 2-1, then 3-0.
I think it's a fair way of putting that. I do.
I don't think Iowa goes 0-3 because Kirk Ferentz really doesn't lose 3 in a row. I mean, and if you go back to the last 9 years, excluding COVID, like Iowa's won 8 or more games every single year. You don't win 8 or more games by losing 3 straight often, right? But like I said, that stretch is gonna be a lot of fun for Iowa fans, and I really hate to hammer this point home. There is going to be a lot of pressure to win one because I'll tell you what, with Ben McCollum making the Elite 8, with Jen Jensen probably being a top 10 preseason ranked team, and I'll be honest, I think they'll be a little bit higher after watching them this summer. If Iowa football goes 0-3, like Maddie, are Iowa fans going to be very quick to turn the page to college basketball and look
it's not
ahead?
out of the realm of possibility, especially because by the time the bye week comes around, we'll be looking at basically we'll be at basketball season, the start of basketball season. Now, do I think everyone's going to completely tune out of football? No. But I do think that there is a relevant point to make that you're getting at of, basketball's becoming its own entity now, with both teams. And there's a lot of excitement around both teams this season. And it would be really fun for Iowa fans to be able to say, we got a really cool women's basketball team, we got a really cool men's basketball team, and oh, look, by the way, our football team is doing this too. It would be really cool to see that happen, and I think a lot of Iowa fans are hoping that that's the situation that they end up in October and early November. But the football team's got to go through a gauntlet for them to get there. And there's no other way of putting it. The benefit, though, I will say, is that the bye week comes at a very needed time. Getting home from that Seattle road trip and then getting a week off is going to be huge for that team after that 3-game stretch.
I'm with you. And, a couple of guys that are going to be huge and making, whatever happens happen, because there's one name that we have not brought up yet that was probably the most surprising comment I heard Kirk Ferentz say all week, and honestly, maybe in the past couple of years. DJ Venami and Tony Diaz. I think you saw me on video, that Tony Diaz quote, my jaw almost dropped because I'm like,
I think I do remember seeing you trying to keep your face because it's a valid point. I mean, you said it on your Swarmcast with Elliot Clough earlier after media day. It's pretty rare that we see the creative teams hyping up a player, especially a new player. To see that happen, to see the team say no, this guy's as advertised, and then Ferentz to come in and say, yeah, he's done really well. That should be very exciting.
Carefully, that's the thing. And I'm like, again, I think he didn't realize how much he was going to blow this up when he said it. But when he said Bob Sanders liked to hit people, Marshall Yonda liked to block people, and Tony Diaz likes catching the football. You're talking about two of arguably the top 5 to 10 players in the last 30 years at Iowa football. I know offensive guard's not the sexiest position out there, but Yonda's in the Baltimore Ravens Ring of Honor for a reason.
Yeah.
He never gave up a sack in his career. We know what Bob Sanders, if he stayed healthy, he would probably be a Hall of Fame safety. So especially for a position like wide receiver where we haven't seen a wide receiver go over 500 yards since 2019, that's pretty ridiculous praise to me.
It is, and I go back to the same thing that like, and maybe this is just my reservation of we have not seen this guy play ourselves. Like the players can, I believe the players are not just saying something to get fans excited. I believe there's some truth behind what they're saying that this guy is legit. We haven't seen it with our own eyes yet. Like you and I have not. Like he didn't participate in the spring game. Well, ideally, we'll see him on the 15th. And so to me right now, because I have not witnessed him myself other than what I have seen on tape and what I have heard and what the creative services team has put out in practices, I'm like, I'm intrigued because like I'm intrigued, but I'm not ready to fully jump on that hype train yet. And that's, and maybe that's just coming from somebody who has seen what a really, really touted, highly recruited, highly sought after receiver can do. And in some of my previous places I've covered, I've seen those players have those expectations and then not meet them. So maybe it's my own experiences coming out and saying, well, let's see what this guy does before I make a true opinion. I do think he has a lot of expectations on him, and I do think that there's some excitement around that. Talking with him over the summer was very enjoyable. He was a great person to chat with. I know you and I talked to him, just like the three of us at one point. And that was a fun conversation, but you can tell he's excited, and you can tell he's ready to go out there and put on a show. That is for sure.
I think there's a couple of things. One, but like if he goes in there and has 600 yards this year, like that's a huge step for Iowa wide receivers in general.
Absolutely.
Like you can sell based off that, right? So again, I mean, if he goes out there 550, 600 yards in a season, catches 5-6 touchdowns, like, wow, what can he do next season with another year of development in Iowa system, right? That's kind of where my head is at. But you're right, because I'll even go back to, I mean, Caleb Brown, the Ohio State transfer at one point here. He had like one career catch, but he was a top 75 overall recruit. Didn't do much at Iowa. I think he scored one touchdown, had a big catch that helped set up a game-winning field goal, back special teams. But then obviously he ended up transferring, right? And, you know, I think he's at UAB now. So this has happened before, but like you said, it's gotten to the point now where it feels like every year there's always one name that always gets brought up. I mean, KJ Parker was a freshman practice demon. He was tearing everybody up, but we barely saw him. When we saw him, there were some inconsistencies. Now, I thought KJ Parker made a couple really nice plays during the spring game, and the best part about it was when he dropped the pass, 2 plays later they threw it right back to him. He caught it, made a huge play down the field. That's exactly what you want to see with the guy that struggled with drops at times. But Tony Diaz, and I hope people understand what I mean by this, he has a wide receiver's mentality and swagger. He's always open. And you need a receiver to believe he's always open. And the thing, I talked to Jeremy Hecklinski, and I'm like, look, how did Tony earn your trust right away? He goes, from the second he walked in, he's been nothing but business. He loves to work out. Every time I don't hesitate to throw him the ball because he's going to go get it. And then I think you were there when somebody asked him about what his mentality is, the ball's in the air. He goes, his smile just dropped, and he was the guy who smiled a lot during that. But he just goes, my quarterback trusts me. I'm gonna catch the ball. I might land on my neck. I might have my feet up in the air, but I'm catching the ball. And I'm like, it sounds so weird, but there's so much power to that when you have that sort of mindset. So I think Tony Diaz is going to be good. I'm going to buy stock into it. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say he's got 800 yards or 1,000 yards. But like, he's a guy that could absolutely help push through and forward, get 500 to 500, 600 yards, score 5 touchdowns. And most importantly, Iowa's running game, I think, is going to be really good this year with a really good offensive line and a deep backfield. What do they have to do more than anything? Don't let defenses stack the box. If Iowa gets a couple perimeter weapons, teams are not going to be able to stack the box against them. Tony Diaz has potential to help defenses not stack the box. And that's just critical from a schematic standpoint, what Tim Lester will want to do offensively.
And one other thing I will mention here too, and this is something that, again, just trying to watch more football in just different types of offense in particular. I've spent way too much time this offseason and in my free time watching NFL offenses, Iowa's offense, group of 5 offenses, like literally just like, I feel like I've become my own like film session in my apartment sometimes this summer. But one thing I will mention here, and this is something that I usually like to point out when it comes to new players that have some star quality projections with them. the best thing that for Tony Diaz right now is that not a single team that Iowa plays has updated tape on this guy right now. And for the most part, that'll stay consistent until probably the bye week. So granted, teams will have tape on, like Ohio State will have tape on Diaz by that point. I would think Michigan will, Washington will. Certainly when we get to the Illinois game, they will, Nebraska, whatever. But the fact that Tony Diaz doesn't have previous experience against these Big Ten teams, whereas like I can guarantee you right now, if we were to sit in the defensive meeting for Michigan, just fast forward, I can tell you right now, they're going to say, here's how we're going to deal with Reese Vandersee. Here's how we're going to deal with DJ Benami. Here's how we're going to block the run. Here's how we're going to stop the run. They don't have that right now with Diaz. And I think that will potentially bode very well for him, especially in this front half of the season. And I think that's where his role in helping Iowa's offense will help. One other thing I will add, we can talk about his ability to catch the ball all the time. One thing he did say to both of us, he loves blocking too. Yeah. He has really, really found a love in blocking and actually being a part of helping the rest of the offense gel together. We can talk about the pass game all day long, but I do think it's important to mention that element as well.
When I did my initial scouting report when he committed to Iowa, the first thing I wrote, and it was in all capital letters, bolded and italicized, was physical. Like the physicality at the line of scrimmage. Like even during pass plays, the way he hits DBs to get off into his route and his timing and his double moves, like I hate to say it, I'm not going to be surprised if he gets an OPI or two or something this year, because he wants to bully. He wants to bully his matchup. And I think there's a lot of power to that. I mean, honestly, Matt, I thought he was bigger than what he was. And that shows volumes how physical he is. Because when I stood next to him, I'm like, wow, I thought he was going to be, an inch and a half, 2 inches taller. I thought he'd be, 5 to 10 pounds heavier. Now, he probably will be by the season, especially going through Iowa's strength program. And obviously, Lester talked about how he wanted to put weight on him and Evan James. But you're right. I don't think that was coach speak. I don't think he was trying to kiss up to get some extra reps, because we know that if you're a wide receiver at Iowa, you don't block. It's like Ben McCollum. If you don't play defense, you're not playing. You have to be able to do certain things, right? So Tony Diaz's physicality, despite his actual physical attributes, he has the mindset of somebody that can be really, really helpful. And you're right. I mean, again, he the way he thinks about it is if he goes in there, pancakes a guy or lands a big block, the next time he runs a route, he's going in there with more confidence. Like he has that psychological edge over that matchup. And those are kind of like the little nuances when you watch a game, especially over a second time. You can tell when the body language changes or when a player is defeated or all these other things. Like those type of things do make a difference and can open up down the field, because how many times have we heard Lester talk about, well, I ran this at this time to get a look at it. And then he went back to the same play 2 quarters later and Iowa breaks off for a 35-yard run. Like it's all a deeper game than simply trying to score every single play, which sounds really weird again, but I really think you know where I'm getting at with that.
Absolutely, yeah. And before we run out of time, we mentioned DJ Benami, so we'll chat about him here for a second, because I do think he's going to be a catalyst. But one other tight end we should talk about too, who was in Chicago, was Addison Estrenga. I know that tight end room is going to be very deep. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on him talking about his injury, his recovery. I still stand by what I had expected walking into Chicago, was that his leadership and his willingness to help that room after his injury has clearly spoken volumes with that tight end room and with the offense in general. They have really, really thrived off of his leadership, and it sounds like he's going to be completely ready to go throughout training camp. I'm intrigued to see how he'll fit into this lineup, especially with Benami's, I guess, I don't want to say resurgence, because that means that it's happened before, but like the breakout that he had, particularly in the last half of the year.
It floors me that Ostrenga is available. I mean, that's amazing to me, because again, it was an Achilles injury. Now, again, remember, they didn't stop the play. Like the play ended.
No, they didn't.
He limped off the field. It's not like there was an injury timeout. And it's like immediately after, Kirk's like, yeah, he's done for the year. And we're all like, what happened? Right? So for him to be full go, it's incredible. And I also think it's even more incredible the fact that his teammates chose him to go represent them at media days.
Absolutely.
Because rehab rehabbing in a team sport is one of the loneliest things you could possibly do. You are away from the practices. You're away from all these other aspects. Like we see a ton of guys and girls, quite frankly, flame out in their sports because of one isolated year. They'll think about transferring to get a fresh start. And I understand the mindset of that too. But Ostrenga to spend all the time in the film room to help DJ Vanami, to uplift those around him. And quite frankly, I think you and I, the first time you and I did this podcast, when you first started, I said, I'm worried about the tight end depth. I'm worried about the tight end room. Now you look at the talent in that room and you're like, this has a really bright future. They got some dudes, DJ Vanami. I don't think anybody's higher on DJ Vanami than me, quite frankly. I've said he could be the best tight end to ever play at Iowa, and I still kind of do believe that if he continues his trajectory. And we'll see what happens now with scouting report when he's the number one guy in the passing game, right? I do think that'll be a factor. But for Ostrenga to battle back the way he did, to speak the way he spoke at media days, it shows volumes to his character. And you talk about culture, like that's a culture guy. Because quite frankly, he's competing to be tight end too. I'm not even sold he's going to be the second tight end on this team because Thomas Meyer is a freak of nature. Thomas Meyer is built like an NFL tight end at this point. He was a very highly touted recruit. But Madison Ostrenga is going into his final year. And the big thing that really stuck out to me, Maddie, was somebody asked him what his expectations are for the year. And he just said, I don't have any. I just appreciate being out there. Like, I just want to be a part of the team. I want to go run my routes. I want to hang out with my teammates. I want us to be successful. And I'm just like, I get it. I get why he's there. And it speaks volumes to just his overall mental makeup, his approach to the sport. And I think he was able to take a step back and get a true appreciation and be grateful for the opportunities that he has earned, because everybody earns their scholarship. Okay, you're not a Big Ten football player without earning it. But you can earn it and not have appreciation and be grateful for it. I was just really impressed with his composure and the appreciation. And again, the team first mentality. That's exactly why he's there, despite only playing at media days, despite only playing 3 games last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could tell that I don't want to say it with a newfound love, but you could tell that there was so much appreciation to still be able to play football, to be able to have the ability to play this season, participate in training camp, things like that, and be able to like know that he has a chance to play his final year. And so I'm with you there. I commend him for just the mental psyche that it takes to go through an injury. You and I have joked about it all summer. I have been going through an injury, not an Achilles tear. It's not the same thing, but I have been sidelined from running all summer, and it's driven me nuts. So I certainly sympathize with the inability to be able to play the sport you love. And so I certainly commend him for that, because that's not an easy thing to do. And as you said, the fact that his team said, you know what, we want you to go represent us is huge, especially when, you know, you didn't play most of the season. And frankly, you spent a lot of it, you know, not necessarily with them all the time.
Yeah.
So that's great. We'll touch on Vanami here. You said that you definitely are certainly on the Vanami hype train. I have to ask this question, and this is a very like fun, silly, not actually like let's talk about the X's and O's of this man.
Yeah.
How soon do we see the video clip from the little video clip that went viral over spring of little 5th grade Vanami? How soon do we see that show up in game? That's my question here.
His first touchdown.
Ooh, okay.
His first touchdown. They're gonna play it.
I remember hearing they're like, no, we got plans for that clip. Don't think we don't. So
yeah, I think or a big catch. I think they need to save it for the touchdown, because I think that'd just be the cherry on top with everything. Right, but I'll tell you, like it's funny too, because he's a very soft-spoken guy. He's opened up a lot since our first.
He very much is.
But he's opened up so much compared to that first time we got to talk to him. I was waiting to see some of that YouTuber personality, though, because he always talked about how he wanted to be a YouTuber, or he thought he was going to be a YouTuber. But the one thing I was so impressed by, when I asked him about it at the spring game, he was almost stoic. Like he just knew the question was coming. He just didn't know.
Knew it was getting brought up.
He just goes, yeah. No crack in his smile or anything. He goes like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I was 5th grade. I was going to be a YouTuber. And then he goes like, I don't know how they got their hands on the video, but like he saw it go out and he goes, yeah, this is going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing. Shout out Trevor Lauk for that. Iowa's offensive tackle, I think, was the one who put it out there. But
He was
I'll
the one to
say
put it
his
out. I
first
think it was
touchdown.
Hecklinski. I think Benami said Hecklinski was the one to find it.
Yeah, and
So
then
how
put it
quickly
out.
it got around a team group chat is yet to be determined. But Lauk, I think, was the first one to post the clip for the rest of the Hawkeye fan
I don't think
base.
there's any context. I think he just tweeted the clip.
I think so too, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because I remember a couple players started posting it on Instagram as well, and I was like, "What is going on?"
I thought it was
So getting the
edited at
content.
first, honestly.
Well, wasn't it an edit? I feel like it was. Like it
Well,
started.
it was an edit, but they started with the clip. But I'm saying, I thought they found like a childhood picture of him and asked AI or something to like do that. And DJ goes like, "Nah, the clip's real." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" But like, low key, like I think he needs to realize if he has a breakout year, like that clip is going to make him so much money and actually be
He's gonna have
usable.
so
That's
much fun with
great
that.
marketing. That's great marketing right there. It
Well,
really
and
is.
it goes back to, I mean, this is why I love covering college sports. It's like they're college kids. Like we're having fun. Like you and I are having a good time. They're having a good time. Like yes, there's all of these conversations about the Protect College Sports Act. There's these conversations about NIL and revenue sharing and media deals, and like we can talk the 5-5 now being a thing, the Colorado injunction. Like we can go on and on, but like at the end of the day, like they're college kids. They're 18 to 25-year-olds. Like we're having fun. Like to me, that's what that is. It's just like your teammates pull a little prank on you. You laugh about it. It becomes an inside joke that the fan base becomes a part of. Like it speaks to like the core of college sports to me, of just like these are college kids just playing a game they love.
I'm with you. And it's also, I always equate it to this because people get mad sometimes when they see athletes or coaches like swear on the sidelines or get in the face of them. And I'm like, guys, this isn't like it's a game, but like it's not. You know what I mean? Like the intense discussions, the intense arguments on the sideline, the locker room stuff, the swear. I mean, it's sports culture. And I'm sorry, it's one of those things where it's like if you just can't accept that, like it might not be for you. You know what I mean? Like there's certain nuances to like this game and the way high level athletics operates. But you're right. You throw in the like it's always on one side or the other. There's those moments, and then there's like the funny prank moments and like all the cool little social media videos that they do. I'm hoping that the Iowa media team, we know they're probably the best in the country. If not, they're in the discussion to be top 3 for what they do across every sport. But like, I'm so excited to see, like, I get excited over watching those dumb videos, but like, oh, like, who would you not let date your sister? Or like all these other stuff. And they ask them and record all the responses, breaking the egg with their bicep on their arm. Like, those are fun videos. Like, that's what continues to draw people in. So I'm with you. And it's nice when you get to take a step back from all the legislation and the drama that surrounds everything, just to be like, look, at the end of the day, what's it supposed to be? It's fun.
Yeah, we're here for a good time. That's what matters at the end of the day. We get to, you and I have a very fun job of getting to watch sports for a living and telling stories about sports, and that's not something that we lucked into, but at the same time, it's not something I don't think either of us take for granted, for sure.
No, I mean, especially with how competitive the industry is, and it's always funny though too, man. I feel like you'll appreciate this. Whenever people tell me, "Oh, I want to do that," or "I'd love to do it," I'm like, "Well, if you do it to watch games, like, don't do it."
Yeah.
There's so much
watching the
more
games
that
is the
goes
fun
into
part.
and then there's but it's like every job. Every job's got its pros and cons. But
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what. I mean, that's why I got in it. I wanted to watch games, and I realized I'm like, oh, there's more. Tweet, you know.
I think I knew there was more involved. I just was like, oh yeah, the games are like the cherry on top, not knowing exactly how big the cake was of everything else that goes into it. But here we
That's
are
like
now.
if you
I'm
go to
coming
a
up on my
concert
like,
when you're like 12 years old, right? Like you go to a
right.
concert, like you like the little show, and then you realize, oh, well, they had to hire production people, they had to build the stage, they had to have people pay the tickets, you have all that, and you're like, oh, this is not simple.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, hey, it keeps us busy, it keeps us motivated, and frankly,
Pays the bills.
It's what we're here to do, and it's it's what we're here to do. We'll call it that. All right, sir. I appreciate you taking the time, David. I know we've got about another week and a half before we see this team again, but I'm curious. You know, we've covered a wide range here. What do you think, if you can pick one thing, what do you think is going to be the key to Iowa's football training camp this year to be successful for the season?
Progression. I think about Iowa football starts in the trenches. I'm not worried at all about Iowa's offensive line. And I am very curious. One thing I will say, Cale Winter could very well be a starting center for Iowa this year. Like, that's a name that's really continued to come up here over the last 3 months and unprompted. So, I mean, I think you and I looked at each other after we interviewed Kirk and we're like, we probably should look into this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Even when I had my one-on-one with George Barnett in the summer, about a month ago, he brought him up too. And I'm like, I kind of shrugged it off for a second. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, this is starting to really connect some dots here. Obviously Cade Pieper could start there, but Iowa's foundation starts in the trenches. They don't win games with finesse. But if Iowa has a strong offensive line, defensive line, if they have a quarterback that doesn't make mistakes and they have a solid run game, like Iowa at minimum is, as crazy as it sounds, they're not, they're going to go 9-3 at the worst. That's really where my head's always at, because they play discipline. They don't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties very often. If they don't turn it over and they run the football, and they stop the run, I think they're going to be fine. But I'm really eyeing in on development of the defensive line more than anything else, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. We talked a lot about the defensive line in this episode and seeing them progress. To me, I think the quarterback position is going to be huge. I think it's whoever does end up being that starting quarterback, how quickly can they assume that starting role and continue gelling with the team? So progression in a sense, but a little bit more finality to it. Once Iowa picks this quarterback, whether it is in training camp or week 1 or week 2, whenever that ends up being, I think everybody would feel better if it was sometime before September 5th.
Yes.
But whoever that quarterback ends up being, to me, a successful training camp is seeing who separates themselves in that battle, earns that starting role, and is able to progress with the rest of the offense moving forward. Whether that happens or not, we'll find out.
I truly believe with the quarterback battle, this is not like the past. They're not picking the best of the worst. They actually feel like they have 2 good quarterbacks, and that's why they didn't go in the portal. So I think that's an important caveat, because there have been times, I feel like, in the past where you're seeing who you could put for what pile of trash you could put Febreze on to make smell the best, right? Like, they're not picking the best of the worst anymore. Like, they actually feel like that they have 2 decent quarterbacks that can go out there and perform at a high level.
Yeah, not only is that something that they've felt like since spring, they felt like that during the bowl prep when the quarterback battle hadn't really started yet, but there were conversations of it happening. And so, I mean, it speaks to the belief that Lester has, belief that Ferentz has, and we'll continue to see what that looks like. But I stand by the progression and separation of the quarterback battle. To me, is going to be the biggest difference. Man, we covered a lot here in the last hour. Thanks for sticking with us, David. Thanks for joining again. Always appreciate chatting with you.
I'm one to yap, so I'm not surprised that we just kind of kept going on and on too. But it was good content. It was good conversation. Honestly, we could go another 2 hours, but we got plenty of time over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I mean, the football season's all year at this point. Like, that's just the way the college calendar is that year now. So it's all good.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate always, when I just send a little text like, "Hey, you're around to record this?" Like, I think I even prefaced with like, "Do you want to spend 30 minutes?" And we've since like almost tripled that time frame. Just waiting to just us talking before we started recording.
Yeah, the way it goes. It's all good.
It is, and I appreciate it. If you guys like this content, as always, there's a new Hawk Off the Press episode every single week. There's also a free newsletter that comes out every Tuesday and Friday. You can sign up for that at thegazette.com. David, thanks for joining, and thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next time.